Internal Revenue Service IRS Tax News. Free electronic filing options for military members and their families. COVID Tax Tip 2021-25, February 25th, 2021. Active duty military personnel have multiple options for free federal tax preparation. One is IRS Free File. This program offers online tax preparation, electronic filing, and direct deposit of refunds at no cost. Now, this would be applicable if military member or not, although the qualifications may be different if military member, meaning looks to me like the IRS has kind of pressured these third-party softwares to offer a free option if your income level is below a certain threshold. The IRS incentive for that to be happening is so that more people obviously can prepare their tax returns and do the electronic filing, which the tax software helps to do. So what this link does basically is it takes you to a search page on the IRS website, which can help you choose the applicable softwares, which are independent third-party softwares that might give a free option. And there might be more possibility, or you might have more benefits or have a higher income threshold or something like that as a military member than you would to get access to that free software as a non-military member. It's good to then have the software, of course, because that can help you out with the interview type of process, to populate and fill out the tax return, help out with the math on it. And like I say, the IRS really likes it because that allows you to not send a paper return, but rather do the electronic filing option and the direct deposit if that would be applicable as well. So members of the military and their families who have income below $72,000 may choose from any of the free file tax software companies to help them prepare their tax returns online. So you can go to the tax software companies to take a look at them. Again, you might have more flexibility given that threshold than if you were not a military member in terms of your choices for the tax software that you can then be using. Obviously, if you're over the $72,000, your tax return might be complex enough that you would want to find a tax professional. If looking for a tax professional and you're a military member, make sure you're looking and talking to someone who has, some competence with tax returns for military members, because there are certain parts and components that will differ for them. And you also could use these software as well but you'd have to pay for it over that point in time, and if you're over the $72,000 possibly. Then there's also the free File Fillable Forms is available for those who have income above $72,000. This is kind of like doing the tax return by hand, right? You got the forms, you've got the instruction, then you got to populate the forms. I wouldn't recommend doing it unless you're comfortable with that process, unless you've done it before for that process, because if your income's over $72,000, your tax return might be a little bit more complex, and it would be nice then to have some more support, such as software for an interview type of process or a tax professional for help. But filling it out with the forms is possible, and it might be a good way to double check too, filling it out with the forms if you want to do that you can download it on the IRS website and look at the instructions for them, and then enter it into the software possibly, if you can. So taxpayers who choose free file fillable forms as their free file option should be comfortable completing their own tax forms without the help of tax preparation software. Taxpayers can use free file on any personal computer, tablet, or smartphone. So you can do your taxes on your phone, which seems not, I wouldn't do that, but you can, and that's neat. So here's how it works. The taxpayer goes to the free file page on irs.gov to see all free file options. Some products are available in Spanish. Military personnel who meet the income requirement can select from any of the providers that have, quote, free for active military for adjusted gross income of $72,000 or less in their offer. So a lot of them, it looks like, have that offer, which again is a higher threshold than you may have if you were a non-military member. The taxpayer selects a provider and follows the links to their webpage to complete and electronically file their tax return. Electronic filing, including free file, is the best way to avoid pandemic-related paper delays. So if you're looking for the refund as soon as possible, the IRS is saying we would like it electronically filed and the direct deposit if applicable. If you owe them money, you may not care as much. You might paper file it and say, as long as you're not penalizing me, then that's fine, and you send them a check. But even then, it might be nice to e-file because it gives you that verification pretty quickly to give you that peace of mind that they have at least received it. So e-filing combined with direct deposit is the fastest way to get a refund. Using free file can help taxpayers figuring things like their earned income tax credit, child independent care credit, and recovery rebate credit. If someone is eligible for a recovery rebate credit and either didn't receive economic impact payment or received less than the full amounts, they must file a 2020 tax return to claim the credit, even if they don't usually file. So the recovery rebate credit is unique to this year. We've never seen it before because it's linked to the stimulus payments that went out during the year. Hopefully the stimulus payments were correct, but they're basically estimates that are based on prior years when the credit is actually based in 2020 numbers. Therefore, if you didn't get the proper amount, the remedy at this point in time is then to file the 2020 tax return and reconcile the difference, hopefully getting a refund with the recovery rebate credit. Taxpayers using Free File will need their prior year adjusted gross income. This is required for all electronic tax returns as part of the user's electronic signature. For taxpayers who have filed before, their 2019 tax return will show their adjusted gross income. If their 2019 return has not yet been processed, they may enter 0 as their prior year adjusted gross income. People who use the non-filers Enter Payment Info Here tool last year to register for the economic impact payment should enter 1 as their prior year AGI. So that's going to be important here. So if you're doing the preparation, the prior year adjusted gross income is one way they kind of verify that it's you. So if you file 2019 tax return, then it'll be on your tax return. It'll be on the first page, the adjusted gross income, AGI you're looking for. If you filed late, though, then they may not have processed it yet. And therefore, your 2019, you could put 0. You can try 0, that because it hasn't been processed, the IRS doesn't have it. And then if you use the non-filer tool, and that's for people that were trying to get the economic impact payment, but they don't normally file a tax return, so the IRS didn't give them an economic impact payment, therefore, they did a non-filer tool, which isn't filing the tax return, but rather just telling the IRS, hey, look, I don't need to file the tax return, but I'm here, and I qualify for an economic impact payment, so send me my payment. And if they sent you the payment then in that case, if it was wrong or something like that, like they sent a payment out, but it was incorrect, then you'd need the recovery rebate credit. And the only way you can get the recovery rebate credit at this point in time is to file a tax return. And you're going to need the prior year AGI to file the tax return possibly. And you don't file a tax return. And so if you use that tool, you got to put a 1 in there for the AGI, which is, that's kind of important to know. So people can visit irs.gov for details on claiming the recovery rebate credit if they aren't required to file a tax return. And then there's Mill Tax. There's a link to Mill Tax here. Is another free tax resource available to military community offered through the Department of Defense. So the fact that it's Mill Tax might mean that it's more specialized. It should hopefully mean that it's more specialized towards people in the military, which could be a good resource to look at because, again, there's differences in the tax code for military members and non-military members. The normal tax software should have the capability to handle those differences. However, the interview process that's set up for the normal tax software may not be designed specifically for military members. So that's why the Mill Tax might be useful there. So Mill Tax is a suite of tax services available for members of the military as well as qualifying veterans and family members. There are no income limits. Mill Tax includes tax preparation and electronic filing software, personalized support for tax consultants, and current information about filing taxes. It's designed to address the realities of military life, including deployment, combat, and training pay, housing and rentals, and multi-state filing. Eligible taxpayers, there's a link to that here, can use Mill Tax to electronically file a federal tax return and up to 3 state returns for free. And that's nice too, because one of the limitations for the filing on the free file is your states. Obviously, some of them will offer the state, but you want to make sure you're choosing an option that has the state requirements available to you. Active duty military stationed in combat zones, there's a link to combat zones here, have more time to file their tax returns. So if you're in your combat zone, then especially thanks for your duties there. And the IRS is graceful enough to extend the deadline for the taxes in that situation. So however, those with spouses and families who choose to file as soon as they can to claim various tax benefits for which they may be eligible. If only one spouse is present to file a tax return, they must have proper authentication to file a joint tax return on behalf of the spouse. the IRS website has more tax information about members of the military. So in other words, you could have an extension if someone's in a combat zone, but you may not want an extension because you might want the taxes now because you want the refund as soon as possible. Problem, however, is that you need 2 signatures on the tax return in order to process the tax return. And if one person is not there, then that's a little bit more difficult to do. So you might want to go through the information if that's going to be an applicable information. You might check this resource out to see, how you might be able to get the signature done so that you can file the tax return and get the refund as soon as possible. So there's links to those items here. There'll be a link to this in the description.